Hello, I'm R.A. Spratt. I write and perform this podcast. If you'd like to support the show, I'm a children's author, so you can buy a book by me, or you can buy me a coffee by going to buymeacoffee.com/storiesrasprat. It's an easy way to make a small thank you gift to the show so I can keep kicking this can down the road. The podcast directory you're using right now should have a link to my Buy Me a Coffee page in the show notes, or you can type it into your browser. That's buymeacoffee.com/storiesrasprat. All contributions are gratefully appreciated. Hello and welcome to Bedtime Stories with me, R.A. Spratt. All right, now I know I said I was going to do the story of St. Joan of Arc this week, and I have done all the research, so that will be coming soon. But it's the Winter Olympics on at the moment, and that reminded me, like I've been thinking about skiing and whatnot. It's obviously at this time of year. It's still technically summer in Australia, so I don't normally think about skiing at this time of year. But I've been, catching bits of the Winter Olympics on the TV and on the internet, and it reminded me that I did actually many years ago, it's probably 12 years ago, write a story about the Winter Olympics, or inspired by the Winter Olympics, for Nanny Piggins. Back when I wrote Nanny Piggins 3, that actually I might have written it 16 years ago. It would obviously be a multiple of 4 but anyway, the Winter Olympics was on back then, and I was watching it, and I thought, what would Nanny Piggins do if she went to the Winter Olympics? So I'm going to read you that story. It's from Nanny Piggins and the Runaway Lion, as I say, book 3 in the series, and it's chapter 6. And it's called Nanny Piggins Joins the Ski Team. Now, just to explain, I don't talk about the Olympics in the book because the Olympic Committee, the International Olympic Committee, doesn't like it if you talk about the Olympics in books and TV without their permission. And I was well aware of that because I was a television writer for years before I became an author. So in the story, I change it to, I think it's the World Championships. So anyway, it was inspired by the Winter Olympics when I wrote it, but it's not directly about the Olympics because I didn't want to get into copyright trouble. All right, so let's read the story. Here we go. Nanny Piggins joins the ski team. "You children are very lucky," began Mr. Green pompously. Derek, Samantha, Michael, and Nanny Piggins immediately froze mid-breakfast. "What have you done this time?" glowered Nanny Piggins. "You can't send us to work in a sweatshop," said Derek. "You know what the social worker said last time you tried." "Yes, well," muttered Mr. Green. He did not like to think of that incident. The social worker had yelled at him for several hours, using the word ashamed rather a lot. "No, this is all above board. I've arranged for a sports scout to come and inspect you." "You've done what?" asked Nanny Piggins. She was perplexed. Mr. Green had never shown any interest in sport before. "I met a talent scout from the National Sports School. He says that if you get any child young enough, you can train them up to be international standard. And you 3 are young, so I told him you would be most suitable," explained Mr. Green, as he shoved another wholemeal muffin in his mouth. "Which sport are you trying us out for?" asked Derek. "I don't know," said Mr. Green dismissively. "He'll measure you and make you run about a bit, I expect. Then he'll come to some decision." "I suppose that wouldn't be too bad," said Nanny Piggins to the children reassuringly, "so long as he picks you for a nice sport, like rowing, where you get to sit down and keep snacks in the boat." But Samantha suspected Mr. Green's true motivation. "Father, where is the National Sports School exactly?" she asked. Mr. Green smiled, totally failing to hide his glee. 643 kilometres away. I measured it on a map," he said triumphantly. "But it will take forever for them to get there and back every day on the bus," protested Nanny Piggins. "It's a residential school," said Mr. Green. "If they get in, they have to live there. They even get to stay in school holidays to do extra jogging." "What?" exploded Nanny Piggins. The doorbell rang, saving Mr. Green from the full brunt of Nanny Piggins' temper. "That will be him now," said Mr. Green, getting to his feet. "How long have you been planning this?" Nanny Piggins called after him. "Oh, just a few months," admitted Mr. Green, as he slipped out of the room to let the scout in. "What are we going to do?" asked Derek. "What if they make us do sit-ups?" exclaimed Samantha. "Should we make a run for it?" suggested Michael. "No, the scout might see you and put you in the marathon team," said Nanny Piggins. "You'd better just play along with it for now. I'll think of something. Don't worry, I won't let them take you to a sports school. I barely think it's suitable you go into a regular school." And so the children went out into the back garden with their father and the sports scout. It was not too awful at first. The scout just measured them, saying things like, good pole vaulter's legs there, and yes, nice stumpy netball fingers, and excellent discus thrower's ankles. But then he started making them do horrible things like run in circles and doing as many push-ups as they could until their arms collapsed. Nanny Piggins and Boris watched from the rooftop. Mr. Green had banned Nanny Piggins from going into the back garden. He correctly suspected that she would try to sabotage the process. Indeed, she was just wondering if she would get in trouble if she threw her binoculars at Mr. Green's head when the most spectacular thing happened. Now, Mr. Green was not a man who believed in paying for home maintenance, so the roof had not been retiled for many years. That said, even a brand new roof is not designed to hold a 700-kilogram bear, who was, at that very moment, choreographing a dramatic ballet to express the unhappy emotions he felt as he watched the poor green children being forced to do exercise. And so, just as Boris did a grand jeté, which is ballet talk for flying leap, the roof collapsed under him, sending Boris hurtling down through the attic, smashing through the ceiling, and landing safely on the soft mattress of Nanny Piggins' bedroom. But Nanny Piggins was not so lucky. The tiles her brother had dislodged were sent flying in every direction, so that the roof quite literally slipped out from under her, shooting her down the steep gable and out into the air, 2 stories above the ground. The children gasped in horror as they saw their nanny come hurtling towards the earth. Mr. Green smiled to see his nanny plummeting towards her death, and the sports scout stared in open-mouthed awe, having never seen such an impeccably dressed pig come shooting off a roof before. But then an even more amazing thing happened. Nanny Piggins tucked in her trotters, curled up into a ball, spun around 3 times, stretched out into a perfect swan dive, and landed effortlessly on the lawn as though this was the type of thing she did every day. "Wow," said Derek. Samantha was too shocked and Michael too impressed to speak. "You could have crushed my gladioli," grumbled Mr. Green. But then the scout stumbled forward, knocking Mr. Green out of the way and clutching Nanny Piggins by the shoulders. "That was the single most impressive feat of athleticism I have seen in all my 40 years as a sports scout," said the sports scout. "I'm not surprised," said Nanny Piggins, for she was an honest pig, and she knew her flying abilities were second to none. "I'm begging you, you have to join the national ski jumping team today," said the scout. He actually got down on his knees and clutched his trotters as he said this. "But what about the children?" spluttered Mr. Green angrily. "It's them you're meant to be taking away." "They're nice kids," said the scout, "but they've got about as much sporting talent as an avocado. I can do anything with them." "Oh, what a relief," said Samantha. She'd been terrified they were going to force her to play hockey. She had a dread fear of being hit in the shins with a stick. "But if you take their nanny, who will look after the children?" protested Mr. Green, looking like he was about to cry. "It's all right. I'll take them with me," said Nanny Piggins. "I wouldn't leave them here with you." "Oh, well, that's all right then," said Mr. Green, suddenly happy again. "Well, I'll leave you all to it. I knew this was a good idea of mine." And with that, he ran to his car, which actually caused the scout to raise an eyebrow, because Mr. Green could put on some serious speed when he was trying to get away from his children. "You must fly to the Italian Alps immediately to meet the rest of the team and commence training," said the scout. "What exactly will Nanny Piggins be training for?" asked Derek. "The World Championships are in a fortnight, and our best ski jumper broke his leg yesterday when he tried to kick a cat and fell down a flight of stairs," explained the scout. "It just goes to show cruelty to animals never pays," said Nanny Piggins wisely. "Except for my sister Wendy, who's a nasty piece of work and deserves a good pinch should you ever meet her. We never thought we'd find a replacement in time, but as soon as I saw you fall off that roof," said the scout, struggling to find the words to express his awe, "it was almost as if you could fly." "Oh, I can," said Nanny Piggins, truthfully. So, the next day, Nanny Piggins, Boris and the children arrived in the Italian Alps. Boris had had to travel in the hold, which made Nanny Piggins angry. Just because her brother was 10 foot tall and weighed 700 kilograms did not mean he was not entitled to bad airline food like the rest of the passengers. But Boris did not mind. He enjoyed flying in the hold. He liked going through all the other passengers' suitcases and trying on their clothes. Sadly, nothing ever fit, but Boris was an optimistic bear, and he would not rest until he stretched or torn every item of clothing trying. When Nanny Piggins and her entourage arrived at the hotel, the rest of the ski jumping team was not immediately impressed. "But you're a girl," protested the coach. "And a pig," complained the team captain. "I know," said Nanny Piggins. "It hardly seems fair. I have twice as many legs, so that doubles the number of ways I can make a landing. But we read the rules carefully, and they didn't say anything specifically excluding pigs." "Only sheep," supplied Derek. "Which is understandable," said Boris. "Sheep are very nice, but very silly creatures, and they cheat." "And so here I am," said Nanny Piggins. "What's the furthest you've ever jumped?" asked the captain, glaring at his new teammate. "Well, she made 14 metres when she fell off the roof," said Michael proudly. "Don't tell me you've never been off a proper ski jump," exclaimed the coach. "I've never even skied," admitted Nanny Piggins. "This is ridiculous," said the captain. The other ski jumpers from the team muttered grumpily. "Why don't you give Nanny Piggins a go?" suggested Samantha. "She'll surprise you." "Good idea," decided the coach. "If she breaks her neck, we definitely won't have to have her in the team." So, Nanny Piggins, Boris, the children, and the entire national ski jumping team trudged up the snowy staircase to the top of the ski jump. There were a lot of stairs. This irritated Nanny Piggins. If she had known that they'd have to walk so far in an upwards direction, she would have packed more snacks. As it was, she made everyone stop for a cake break twice along the way. Fortunately, she had 2 large mud cakes in her handbag. When they got to the top and looked down, the children were terrified. The ski jump was so long and steep, they did not see how jumping off it could possibly be a sport. It looked about as safe as leaping off a 15-storey building. But Nanny Piggins was unperturbed. "Is that all?" she asked dismissively. "Haven't you got a higher one?" The captain ignored her bravado. "Do you want me to run you through the basics?" he asked, because he was not really a bad person, and he did not want to get in trouble for accidental pigicide. "Young man," said Nanny Piggins scornfully, as she drew herself up to her full 4 feet of height, "there is nothing you could teach me about flying." Then she thought better of it. "Actually, yes, there is. Could you show me how to put the skis on?" So, after the coach and the captain strapped the skis to Nanny Piggins' feet, which took a lot of gaffer tape because ski boots are not designed to fit trotters, an oversight the manufacturers really should remedy, Nanny Piggins stood atop the ski jump. She looked spectacular. She was wearing her flying pig costume from the circus. It was made of skin-tight yellow leather with black and red stripes down either side, and a helmet that said, "Nanny Piggins, Flying Pig," written on it in diamantes. Even the callous coach started to feel bad as he watched the petite and glamorous pig standing on the precipice, the wind rippling through her perfectly coiffured hair. "You don't have to do this, you know," said the captain. "You can just ask the Ski Jumping Association to send you home. I'm sure they won't fine you or anything." Nanny Piggins turned and looked the captain in the eye. "If I don't jump, will I have to walk all the way back down those stairs?" she asked. "Well, yes," conceded the captain. "Well, piffle to that," said Nanny Piggins, with which she turned to face the valley and stepped over the edge. The children held their breaths, not out of fear, but from sheer admiration, because as soon as Nanny Piggins set off, it was clear she knew exactly what she was doing. Then Nanny gave herself over to gravity and hurtled down the slope. Her body extended forward, leaning into the wind. By the time she shot off the end of the jump, she had transformed herself into the shape of a bullet. Her snout stretched forward, so she cut through the air like a hot knife through butter. The ski jumpers and coaching staff stared in astounded awe. "She's never going to land," exclaimed the captain. "That is the most beautiful ski jump I've ever seen," muttered the coach. But their admiration was soon interrupted by a more serious realisation. "She's going to hit the ski lodge!" screamed Samantha. And Samantha was right. Nanny Piggins' ski jump was so good that she was not going to land in the landing area. She was going to overshoot it entirely and hit the ski lodge behind. "What are we going to do?" asked Derek, totally at a loss, because his nanny was not there to tell him. "I can't look," said Samantha, although she was so paralysed with fear she could not move the muscles to close her eyes. "It's all right," yelled Michael. "I think she's aiming for it." And indeed, Nanny Piggins was. If the ski jumpers had not seen it for themselves, they would never have believed it. For Nanny Piggins gracefully touched down just in front of the ski lodge, slid across the veranda and into the downstairs bar. Everyone was silent for a moment as they waited to hear the inevitable crash, but there was none. "Quick, we've got to see if she's all right," said Derek. The children and the ski jumping team hastily ran down the stairs and through the snow to the lodge to check on Nanny Piggins. But they needn't have worried. By the time they got inside, they found Nanny Piggins dancing along the bar, drinking hot chocolate and singing alpine folk songs, much to the delight of the other patrons. "You're alive," said Samantha. "Of course I'm alive," said Nanny Piggins, although I was worried there for a moment. I thought I was going to miss the ski lodge, which would have been terrible because I was starving. And so, having witnessed her superior ability, the other ski jumpers immediately embraced Nanny Piggins as a fellow team member. They wanted to make her team captain, but she refused, because captains had to give interviews to journalists, and she always found it hard not to bite journalists on the legs. They're such terrible liars. She did, however, find time to totally overhaul the sport of ski jumping. For a start, she convinced the ski jumpers to follow her own training regime, which was to sleep as late as possible, to eat everything you can, and to do absolutely no weight training, fitness training, or ski training at all. "It's very, very important to be well rested," explained Nanny Piggins. "If you are going to win, you'll need all your energy. And if you're going to lose, you might as well look fabulous, which means no bags under your eyes." She also completely changed the team's diet. The first thing she did was sack the team's macrobiotic chef. It took some time to explain to her what a macrobiotic chef was, but as soon as she understood, she chased him around the kitchen 7 times with his own soup ladle. Nanny Piggins did not usually believe in violence, but cruelty to food brought out her disciplinarian side. She instituted a strict high-calorie diet for all the athletes and coaching staff, which made her instantly beloved. She insisted on them eating double the amount of cake and chocolate she would normally recommend because they had been on macrobiotics for so long and needed to undo the damage. And so, when the team arrived at the World Championships a fortnight later, they were happier and fatter than they had ever been before. And in a sport that involves plummeting, a few extra kilos does not hurt. The Russians and the Norwegians were their main competitors, and when they saw Nanny Piggins arrive at the ski jump venue, they laughed openly. If Nanny Piggins had not had such a lovely time drinking hot chocolate and singing alpine folk songs for the past fortnight, she might have thought about punishing them. As it was, she knew that being beaten by a flying pig would be punishment enough. The morning of the big competition soon arrived. "Are you nervous?" asked Derek. "Why would I feel nervous?" replied Nanny Piggins. "Obviously, I feel bad for the other competitors because they will shortly be made to look like fools on international television. But I don't think they'll attack me. They'll probably just cry a lot and never want to see snow again." Now, the way the Ski Jump World Championships works is that each athlete gets 2 jumps. The distances are measured and points are given for form and style by an international panel of judges. Then all those numbers are combined in a complicated way that no one quite understands by someone in a back room with a calculator, and that is how the winner is decided. The competition started early in the morning, but it took quite a while to get through all the athletes, because the ones who jumped well took forever celebrating by pumping their fists in the air and showing off in front of the crowd. And the ones who jumped badly had to be scraped off the bottom of the hillside by an ambulance crew. Nanny Piggins was scheduled to jump last, because no one had ever heard of her before, and if she made a botch of it, they didn't want her to damage the ramp before everyone else had had their turn. So, by the time Nanny Piggins stepped out onto the top of the ski jump, the Norwegians were in the lead and the Russians close behind. She was again wearing her bright yellow jumping suit. Nanny Piggins was excused from wearing the team colours because she undeniably looked fabulous in yellow. In the dressing shed behind her, Nanny Piggins could hear the Norwegian coach sniggering with the Russian coach. One of them even had the audacity to make an oinking noise. Nanny Piggins made a mental note to deal with them later. But she was not going to be distracted now, because the crisp alpine air smelled clean and pure, and the updraft was strong and welcoming. The mountain was practically calling to her, saying, "Jump, Nanny Piggins, jump." And so she did. Nanny Piggins stepped over the edge, crouched low while she built up momentum, and then launched off the end of the jump like a rocket. There were no cheers, no boos, and definitely no oinking noises. The crowd of 10,000 people watched Nanny Piggins fly through the air in completely silent awe. That was until the people in the main stand at the bottom realised she was going to overshoot the landing area again and crash into them. At this point, people started screaming and trying to get out of the way. But they should have had more faith in the world's greatest flying pig. The people in the top row at the back just heard her say, "Duck, please," as she shot through where they'd been sitting, missing the back of their seats by less than a centimetre. She then flew another 50 metres before landing in the drive-through lane of a fast food restaurant a block down the street. Naturally, she picked up 24 merry meals for herself, the children, Boris and the rest of the team, before walking back. The crowd roared cheers of approval as she re-entered the stadium. Even the people who had been forced to evacuate their seats did not mind. They had a story they'd be able to tell their grandchildren in years to come. The time they'd nearly been hit in the head by the world's greatest ski-jumping pig. The Russians and Norwegians did not look so smug now. They were too busy reading the rulebook, triple-checking to see if you really could enter a female pig in the ski jump world championships. "You did it, Nanny Piggins," yelled Derek excitedly. "You jumped further than anyone else ever in the history of ski jump." "Really?" said Nanny Piggins. "I wondered why they built the stand so close. It makes you wonder why all these silly men go into ski jumping if they're so bad at it. Perhaps it's just because they like to wear skin-tight bodysuits." "Your first jump was so much further than anybody else. You only have to compete in your second jump and you'll win," said Michael excitedly. He'd brought along a calculator and worked that out for himself. The second round was held that afternoon. Nanny Piggins spent the interim signing autographs and eating chocolate to gird her energy. All the other competitors did their jumps and they tried their best, but their hearts were not in it. As Nanny Piggins had predicted, many of them were already crying and planning to give the sport up entirely, having seen their entire life's work trounced by a female pig. The Norwegian and Russian coaches scowled at Nanny Piggins as she walked towards the top of the ski jump carrying her skis. This time she did stop to speak to them. "Gentlemen, I know competitive sport brings out the worst in humans, but in the future I advise you not to engage in piggist behaviour. It is unseemly, and, as a pig, it is wearisome having to constantly be putting silly men in their place." "We don't know what you're talking about," protested the Russian coach. "Then let me explain," said Nanny Piggins menacingly. "If I hear an oink out of either of you again, you'll soon be making a very different noise when I sink my teeth into your shins." With that, Nanny Piggins strode out onto the ski jump. "You can do it, Nanny Piggins," encouraged Derek. "We're so proud of you," called Samantha. "Throw in a somersault," suggested Michael. "And see if you can land in the ice cream shop this time," called Boris. "I fancy a scoop of Tutti Frutti." Nanny Piggins gave her entourage the thumbs up, then turned to look down the slope. She saw the crowd, now 15,000 strong, because people had jumped in their cars and driven over to see the flying pig, and found the spot she was aiming for, the back row of the stand, now vacated in anticipation. Then she launched herself into the jump. Nanny Piggins whistled down the ramp even faster than before, her ears drawn tight against her head and her snout stretched forward for maximum aerodynamics. Then, at just the right moment, she used her hind legs to thrust herself forward off the jump, and she was flying. The people from the back row of the stand knew they could have kept their seats, because Nanny Piggins was going even further this time. The penthouse suite of the tallest hotel in town was about to get a flying pig come crashing in through its window. That was until it happened. Someone opened a chocolate bar. Now, the sound of a chocolate bar wrapper being torn open is very distinctive, and Nanny Piggins' hearing was so good she could tell the difference between a Kit Kat and a Mars bar being opened from 5 kilometres away. So when she heard that magical noise, she never really made a conscious decision. Her entire body simply responded reflexively, swooping in the general direction of the sound and snapping the chocolate bar out of the hand of its owner, who just happened to be the Norwegian judge. The entire crowd groaned with disappointment. When the children found Nanny Piggins, she was sitting in the snow behind the judge's table, trying to lick every last trace of chocolate out of the wrapper. "Oh, Nanny Piggins," sympathised Samantha, "are you all right?" Boris did not say anything. He just wrapped his sister in a bear hug. "Are you dreadfully disappointed to be disqualified and lose out on the gold medal?" asked Derek. Nanny Piggins looked up. "Gold medal?" It took her a moment to realise what they were saying. "Why would I worry about that? I've just had the most delicious chocolate bar." "But Nanny Piggins," said Michael, "I think that Norwegian judge may have opened the chocolate bar on purpose to trick you into not winning." "Then he's a very silly man indeed," said Nanny Piggins, "because who got to eat the chocolate bar? Not him! Really, I don't know how these men get to be national officials. Their priorities are all wrong. But you've been thrown out of the national team, said Samantha. And we have to go back to living with Father, said Derek. It's probably for the best, said Nanny Piggins. We really shouldn't leave your father unattended for too long. It isn't fair on the rest of the community. And ski jumping is exhausting. But you never do any training or practice, said Michael. I know, but being universally admired is hard work, explained Nanny Piggins. Besides, I much prefer being a nanny. It's more exciting. And so Nanny Piggins, Boris and the children headed home that afternoon, satisfied that they had enjoyed a lovely 2-week holiday and completely revolutionised the sport of ski jumping at the same time. The end. Time for bed. All right, well, we'll leave it there. I hope you enjoyed that story, and I hope you've enjoyed watching the Winter Olympics over the last couple of weeks. Next week, we'll get back and I'll do Joan of Arc, hopefully. I was also looking at the story of St. Valentine, because it was Valentine's Day this week. Maybe we'll do that next year for Valentine's Day. We'll see. All right, well, take care, and until next time, goodbye. Hello, it's me again. If you enjoyed listening to Bedtime Stories with R.A. Spratt, it would be really helpful if you could like, subscribe, follow, and or review the show on whatever podcast platform you're listening to now. Every little one of those digital affirmations helps, and the bigger this podcast gets, the more I can justify procrastinating from my real job to keep bringing these stories to you. Thank you.